global now.
Clear. Yo, what's good? I'm hiding behind this table, but yo, I just wanted to say shout out to everyone who's supporting us. I feel like we don't emphasize the subscribers more these days. Like we just be working every day, just trying to get it to blow and work for people to relate with the podcast. But I just wanted to take this time to say shout out to like all the subscribers. Like I know on my part there needs to be like hard work that needs to be put in into production and everything. And when I started this, I actually thought like I would be in a 1K subscription in a month, but I've seen like that's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of like research and to know about everything that I'm talking about. But I just appreciate the 77 that a day. Like every person that's like able to just like or just view it, even for 1 second, like that goes a long way. And like it keeps us motivated. Like we're getting more ideas. We're trying to like innovate it. We're always staying relevant to our generation. So it's something that we're working on. Progress, the setting, everything. It's all work. It's all team effort. We've got Sean, we've got Ryan, we've got a couple of guys that I want to bring into the scene. So I don't want to waste this time. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Shout out to Kwekwe. We are always putting it there for a reason because it represents something and it represents where I come from and where my passion is drawn. So this is the space. But shout out to everyone who's been like helping me out. Shout out to the subscribers. Shout out to myself for the work and the ideas. So that's all, man. I hope you enjoy each and every podcast you're going to be watching. There's something to learn from it. That's what we're trying to do. I don't want to make this long, but shout out and peace. This is Achu. We out. Subscribe, like, comment. Subscribe, like, comment. I forget that part. I always forget that part. Like, how am I going to go professional if I don't know that part? That's the only part I'm missing out. So I'm actually going to put this at the first step and just say subscribe, like, gents. Like this shit. If you vibe with it, you vibe with it. If you don't, you don't. It's still cool. What's this shit? You learn something, 1 or 2 from a young man like me and my team. Super open-minded people that are ready to actually work. Sorry for that one. It shows that I'm out.
We global now.
I just wanted to remind everybody to subscribe to the channel. Of course, you better subscribe. I was looking into the Travern tragedy that just happened. Condolences to everyone that was affected by the incident. But like, what I wanted to review is like on the made of basis on merit. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to be like commentating, like putting emotions on it. You must look at what's factual. What's the factual evidence? That's the what really could have happened. What really caused everything to happen? And I feel like that's the basis of the argument. That's where it's supposed to be starting from. It shouldn't be a matter of what's emotionally hurting people. At the end of the day, parents are allowed to be emotional. At the end of the day, the community is allowed to be emotional. Also us as people that are viewing it. But at the end of the day, also, we need to put like factual context into it and understand what's happening. 1, we know that these people could have been sprayed or there could have been some form of alcohol poisoning. 2, we know that they are underage children that were going to taverns. 3, we know that these guys, the bouncers, were spraying something, whether it was pepper spray or what. That's the facts that are there, right? So what we really need to understand is, if these guys can allow 14-year-olds to enter into a club
going to a tavern, or 14, because they're saying from the age of 14 to 21, which could be actually less. Because at the end of the day, we find this information after the tragedy. And the question that lies is always, how do you prevent such incidents from happening in the future? And how do you make sure that the people are held accountable? Because now you close down the tavern indefinitely, but there are definitely some other taverns that are also doing the same thing. So the problem is this: how are kids being allowed to leave home if they're actually 17, 16, 15, or actually 14 to go clubbing to a tavern? At the same time, like, we need to ask ourselves, who is really controlling these kids? Because they say teenagers can sneak out and everything, but how long have they been sneaking out? Are parents actually accountable for their own children? Before we put the government into place, before we put the tavern into like perspective, we also need to look at like the family settings. Because I was looking at these houses, these are not mansions, these are not high-end suburbs that these kids are running away from. These are actually like small tavern houses. So at the end of the day, the first thing we need to put into accountability is parents as well. Because parents are also there at the houses. How are kids sneaking out when they are 14? Shouldn't they be doing homework by this time? If they are 17, should they be doing their metric or something by this time? Grade 10, that's actually a very young age. Then 2, we need to put into perspective. Like, no one really asks for IDs. And no one has been asking for IDs. And I see people coming out saying, oh no, these people are underage. But who really asks for IDs, even at high-end clubs? Because if this is happening at taverns, you need to ask yourself one other question. What's happening in high-end clubs? Because if this can happen at a local tavern, you need to ask yourself what's happening in the CBD, what's really happening in the high-end clubs and places like that. Because this just goes to show you how human trafficking could happen, how like poisoning, and how actually people can get killed in clubs or going out. And this is just a micro of the macro at the end of the day. So in honest truth, we also need to ask questions like, how the heck has this system been set up where people no longer ask for IDs when people are getting in the club? Not even the club, the tavern. Because now we know that these kids really just can get in anywhere. They can go anywhere without even an ID. There's no accountabilities because now the bouncers are spraying people, all this they're inside, but did you check them when they were getting in? And there was a fluctuation of kids that are saying it's at the brink of capacity. No one can control that at the end of the day. So in all earnest, all these questions need to be asked and answered. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be crying foul to the wrong people again. So accountability is key, like my brother always says. So like this system has been going on for so long, because you shut out one tavern, there's always the next tavern. There's always the next club. There's always the next place to go to. So shutting the club down could be a solution just for that particular place. That's why I'm saying, like, how do you prevent such situations from happening further on? Because you might think you stopped it, but what's happening in other clubs? What's happening in other places that we don't even know of? Who is really like putting into investigations in how to enforce all this stuff from not happening? Because it could actually be the alcohol, and it's not even the club. At the end of the day, we really need to ask ourselves these questions and really get to see. Also, the government in itself, in honest truth, knows so much about this. The government really needs to make sure that they're also taking care of the low-end communities. Because at the end of the day, you see that the low-end communities are the ones that suffer. While these guys that have taverns might be going, all these guys that have clubs and all these taverns are the ones that are actually going back to their suburbs and their kids are safe. But our low-end people, the people that are really struggling, now get to suffer more just because of that. So the government has to put in place, because it doesn't help for the government to come for the funeral when they never came for the community. It makes no logical sense. It's like you come for the disaster when you're never there for the prevention. That's how these governments are set up. They're always there to make sure that they fund the funerals, they fund whatever, but they never fund how people are really living. They never really fund into who's really, like, you could put police officers at night to actually check with you. How old are you? Where are you going? Go back home. They could do random patrols like that. We know that. Like, they could make sure they do random checkups at clubs to make sure that people are actually, like, in the legal age. Because yet again, that's why I'm saying that this just goes to show you that in high-end clubs, so much stuff is happening. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, people are ODing, like, people are overdosing, people are being human trafficked. Like, there's, like, unnecessary prostitution. And all this stuff needs, like, to come into accountability. If not by the government, then by who? If not by the community, then by who? Because again, the community comes out and cries foul, or at least, because if it was a club in the CBD, I would understand. But this is a local tavern where people know each other. This is a local space where people can call each other. One of the victims was actually saying that that died. They were saying that the friends actually called to say, "Hey, let's go to the tavern." So basically, this is a place where people actually get to. It's a community. It's a local community. So you ask yourself, if this is happening in local communities, what's happening in the higher places? And what is the government not doing? Because at the end of the day, it could just be like fundraising the funeral, but not fundraising the society at large. Because I'm always shocked when I hear stories about what's happening in Joburg, Centon, and stuff like that. We hear about hitmen running around killing people. That's something that's not new in South Africa. That's something that's not new anywhere. So at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, like, who really needs to be held accountable? And how can we prevent such situations from happening? One, like, we really need to make sure we know what's going on in our kid's life. Because at the same time, I heard one parent saying they were trying to phone the child, see if the child is there, which got me thinking, do I even talk to when was the last time I talked to my parent? If I actually want to go out, do I even talk to my parent? Because literally we come from a generation where, we really had to sneak out. We really had to, like, tell our parents that, we're going to a birthday party if we really wanted to go out. If not for that, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. So, like, from the home setting, first of all, that's where really it lies into. Like, if you can fix the home setting, you can fix everything. Because you can't control how the government moves. You can't control how these clubs move. You can't control how the alcohol moves. You can't control how the drug system moves, but definitely you can control your child and where they go. So, like, we really need to start, like, looking into the communication we have with our kids. Because if there's no communication at all, then do you really get surprised when someone dies? Do you really get surprised when you hear that your cousin in South Africa died? I feel like you would get hurt. But is there any form of communication that's happening inside the household to really understand where these kids are going or where one person could be going? Because if there is no form of communication, then at the end of the day, there is no form of communication. People can sneak out, people are afraid to say where they're going. Because if you really create a tone where you can actually communicate and voice out, where are you going? What are the pros and cons of the places you're going? Maybe you could actually prevent a lot of shit from happening. It's simple like that. And also, like, peer pressure. We got peers that are going to these places. This is our generation, and this is just how it is. And sometimes you realize it later on, that was peer pressure. But in the moment, sometimes you don't even notice, that is peer pressure, or that is actually not right. And that's how we're saying, like, teenagers can sneak out. It's not a new thing. It's a thing that's been happening since way back. So really, at the end of the day, kids also, after hearing this, you really need to ask yourself, where are you going? Who are you going with? I've actually explained this in some other episode when we're saying that the consequences of going out, like, do you even have transport to come back home? who are you going with? Are you protected enough? Because at the end of the day, when you get inside, it's a different vibe. You might go to the VIP section and leave your friends, So you really need to be like definitely considerate of the people you're going with. Because if you are not, then I promise you, social groups are very important at the end of the day. So going to the government and even the alcohol association, I say, what are people doing to make sure that there is enforcement of laws? Because if there is no enforcement, this is why I'm saying that we need to ask ourselves questions, not only from an emotional point of view, but from like a factual point of view. On the ground, we know that people enter into clubs without IDs. We've been knowing this. People get sold cigarettes and alcohol without IDs. We've been knowing this for some time. And what do? We do nothing. We don't really care. It's not surprising to hear that. It's not really surprising to hear that a 15-year-old was in the club. It's not really surprising to hear that a 15-year-old got pregnant by someone, or something, or some animal at this state. It's not really surprising because that's the norm of the time. You get what I'm saying? So when we hear 14-year-olds at clubs, it becomes something that's big on mass media. But really in the streets, dog, like we see young kids drinking. We see young kids smoking. Like who's telling those kids not to smoke? Like I didn't tell nobody not to smoke because I'm not their parent. But at the end of the day, you really need to ask yourself, like what's happening with these groups and who's really enforcing these laws? Because no one is, no one wants to, no one will. People only come for the funeral. They won't come for the party. Said as it is, no one really cares. Because I was seeing like people from Methodist. Yeah, I was checking out people from Methodist that were actually singing and doing that. I'm just there like, yo, you might not even go to church and you might be going out to the club, but guess who comes to your funeral? People from the church, just to light up candles for you. So even like more questions than answers. Those are the headlines that are there. More questions than answers. That's what I'm saying right now. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, there is no need for questions. The only need is to prevent this shit from happening again. Yes, let the investigations go on because that's factual. We can't be living in a world where now there is like laboratories that people can actually go and test and do samples. Let's wait for the investigations and really see what happened. It's not a big deal. Let's wait and actually see what happens. But how do we prevent this from happening in the future? That's where my concern is. And how do we fix the problem? And the problem is enforcement. It's enforcement in the household. It's enforcement by the government. It's enforcement by the club owners. It's enforcement by actually social groups themselves enforcing each other. It's enforcement on one-on-one. Like, if you know you're 15 and 14, then why would you still go? So it actually comes to a personal perspective, but still, that's why even when you're young, you might actually be pardoned for a crime. So I actually understand it when people say that these kids might not have understood what they were getting themselves into. But this is the same reason why we always say that kids should be monitored. Because 14-year-old, that's really very young to be actually going out anyway. I don't think I was going out anyway till I was 16. And like, you know the stories that are happening. So back to what I was saying. If you can actually control what's happening in the taverns, then how do you expect to control what happens in the high-end clubs? People do what they want. People do exactly what they're going to do. And no one is held accountable. We were hearing that at Stellenbosch, some guy was pissing on some black other dude. That's how free the nation has become. Like, we've got hitmen, there's so many problems in the country that need to be addressed, but no one is addressing them. And then the only thing we can do is light up candles and wait for the next tragedy to happen. So at the end of the day, are we going to be a nation that waits for tragedies to happen? Are we going to be a nation that just looks at like idle? Just look, as long as you're making money, then you're okay. Then the rest of the world can suffer. Is that like what we're trying to say? Because it goes back again to what someone was saying. What were we actually gaining freedom for? Because at the end of the day, we might have been in apartheid, we might have been like colonized by the whites, but right now we're being colonized by so much stuff that's happening in the society. No one actually takes time to actually see that alcohol is actually destroying a lot of stuff. No one takes time to see that these guys that are in government are not being accountable to so much stuff that it will affect you one way or the other. And you might not see it today, and it might not be your child today, but tomorrow you never know. Tomorrow you never know who it might be. So again, it goes to the question of what my brother always says: accountability, accountability, accountability. Because without accountability, there is nothing at all. So tiny desk, I don't know like how people are gonna be doing this. I don't know how people wanna do this. I don't know how you guys are doing this in the government. I don't know how you guys are doing this at home. But we need to do better as a nation. We need to do better as households. We need to do better as friends. We need to do better as individuals. That's all that's there. So from ReRoute Podcast, let's just reevaluate a lot of stuff, And like, if you like the content, before I shut my mouth up, I always forget this part. I'm always forgetting this part. I'm always supposed to say like, comment, and subscribe on what really needs to change. Because we want to see some comments where people actually reevaluate and tell us that, the 1, 2, and 3 and 3 needs to be changed. Do we need to start doing petitions in Africa? Because I see petitions in Europe. I see petitions for what's this? For global warming and stuff like that. We got like companies to change these plastic straws into like into this, I don't know, these straws that's just like crazy enough. So if we can do petitions for that, why can't we do petitions at a social level, at a community level, the things that really affect us? We saw Soweto the other time. They tried their best. They did their protest and stuff like that. That's what we really need. We really need like people that can go down and actually petition for stuff that's happening in their own area. Because Europe is petitioning for their stuff that actually get implemented here in Africa also. So why can't we also petition for stuff that really affect us? That's all I'm saying. So before I shut off, like, comment, like, just let's talk, let's discuss more on it, on a more broader perspective. Like, let's not look only at the micro of the incident, but also at the macro, at the country at the large, as a continent at large, and what really do we want, what identity do you want to be associated as a community, as a country, and as what not? Like, what really do we really want to be associated with? That's all I'm saying. So before I go, like, subscribe, comment, ReRoute Podcast. This is the tiny desk. Supposed to bring a guest here, they didn't come, but still going to use the space because now we know what to do. So yeah, that's that, in that. Peace out.